Dr. Rupert Bruce Mitford, who's come to York today to look at the 8th century helmet, which was recently found on a coffer gate. And by him is sitting Peter Adderman, the director of the York Archaeological Trust. And they've been discussing this afternoon, they've been looking at the helmet and discussing its parallels and stylistic affinities. And they're just going to discuss this helmet. What do you think about this new helmet, you two?
Well, I've had it for a week. You've had it for about 3 or 4 hours. What do you think, Rupert?
Well, it's a terrific find, of course, and in itself, there are so few helmets in existence in this country, or indeed in Europe, for pretty well the millennium in which it falls, that it's a terrific find in itself. But then, of course, it's marvellously preserved, and it has all kinds of new and interesting features. I'm thinking particularly of the crest that runs from front to back over the skull, and the similar crest that runs, if we call it a crest, from ear to ear across the head at right angles. So that's a very interesting feature, which is not parallel on any other helmet I know, chiefly because it's concave in design and has
the cross section of the
crest is concave, and in all the helmets I know you have a convex crest from front to back, and if you have anything from over the head from ear to ear, it's a flat strip of some sort. So to have two crests, one from front to back, one from side to side, of equal weight, which are the same design, and the concave rather than convex, is a totally novel idea in helmets as far as I know.
It's not, it doesn't make sense really, it's not a very strong design, is it?
It's not strong design. I was wondering as we were thinking about it just now whether the sides of the concave crest comes up to narrow ridges down each edge of the concavity. And I was just wondering how solid they were in construction, and whether they had any actual use in terms of warding off a blow or anything of that sort.
Well, as it happens, the helmet has had a blow recently, hasn't it? It was hit by the bulldozer. You can see the makeup of those. I would imagine they might have had a wire or something straightening them, but there doesn't seem to be anything
not
there.
Not particularly strong from a defensive point of view. And whether these features, they have two functions. One is to provide a kind of central element which holds a plate which helps to rivet together the sections out of which the cap is built. I think they're a vehicle for carrying the rivets that hold the plates together. But apart from that, it seems to have, in this case, the function of having the inscription, which is a remarkable inscription.
I think there's really no parallel to that at all.
Well, there are, of course, lots of little inscriptions,
around
graffiti in Roman helmets, late Roman helmets, which contain have the maker's name or the owner's name or some sort of little message or good luck formula or something like that. But this is obviously a serious inscription, and it's a long one, isn't it?
It's retrograde in as much as it's been punched through from the back.
Yes,
as
that's
we look at it.
Very odd, yes.
So you read it, as it were, in reverse.
It's slightly cryptic.
It does appear to be a Latin inscription as far as one can see.
Yes.
There is a word which looks like ekemos, which doesn't seem to mean very much, then possibly amen, and then what appears to be a personal name, Osherry. I don't know quite what sort of inscriptions it's going to be, whether the name Osherry might be a maker's name or an owner's name or a donor's name or what sort of thing. Have you any idea? Well, obviously there are a few parallels or no parallels.
Well, what interests me is the length of the inscription. I mean, if it were a very short one, like Osherry may fake it or something, you know, that would be all right. But here you've got an inscription that is, 20 inches in length?
Something like that.
And it's a very long inscription, and whether it repeats itself twice or whether it adds up into one long inscription, I don't know. But if it does, it must be something much more than the maker's name. It must be quite a message that it's conveying. And it would be interesting to know whether it has any, apotropaic significance to ward off danger, an evil eye or something.
Exactly.
As sometimes, like the Bente Grange helmet, which has the Christian cross on the nasal, or indeed some of the images on the Vendel helmets may have a kind of psychological or spiritual purpose on the helmet.
Yes, Richard Bailey was mentioning something of that sort the other day about mixing up a charm and then wrapping it around your head. This was the reference he suggested.
Yes.
And, it sounds very much like that sort of thing. But we'll have to wait, I'm afraid. It's impossible to read the rest of the inscriptions. It's covered in mud at the moment.
The other features of the design are very interesting. There's the mail curtain at the back, of course, which is unlike the Bente Grange or Sutton Hoo helmets, but is parallel in the East Scandinavian ones.
You've written them on the Spangen helmet.
And in the Spangen helm group. So that's an interesting variation on the two helmets we have already.
Did you actually work out what kind of mail it was, what the construction was from the little bit we could see?
No, I mean you could only see a few of the links through the hole inside the interior of the helmet. You could see a few links were recognisable, but you need to radiograph them to see if they were riveted.
Yes.
And if they are riveted, they'd be riveted with a second metal. I mean, the rivets would be bronze rivets in an iron rings, which would have sort of slightly spatulate ends which overlap and are riveted. But you'd pick that up, and it could also be butt jointed or welded rings, individually welded rings. But you can't tell that without having it cleaned and radiographed.
Yes, well, of course, that's the next stage, really.
Yes,
We're hoping
yes.
to get it to the hospital soon, and we're going to try a number of techniques, and it's quite possible we shall be able to get a series of, as it were, radiographic sections of it to give some notion as to whether it's simply the mail that's inside the helm, or whether, as we think, one of the cheek pieces is in there as well, or indeed whether there's anything else that there may well be. At the moment it's full of mud and impossible for us to see. But to have that kind of evidence will make it very much easier to excavate and conserve, and I'm sure that must be the next stage.
Yes, because your helmet has plenty of mechanical strength left in it. It's
Jolly good
free
condition.
metal, and whereas the Sutton Hoo helmet was simply pure rust. It was just so many bits of rust. That was all there really was, apart from the bronze extras, like the eyebrows and so on. But
Well, it certainly it looks good at the moment. We're very worried about it in the sense it's a very important object. And as you probably gathered, we've got it in a nitrogen atmosphere in a tank just to hold it, so that perhaps there will be no further corrosion, and we can decide what's the best way to tackle it.
I'm sure that's extremely sensible way of approaching it, and to take it calmly and give yourself heaps of time and get a lot of good opinions from scientific specialists and so on, and people who know about the problem to
It's frustrating.
actually move in on it. Yes,
It's frustrating because some of the very obvious features that we can already just about see, we can't really look at. The decoration, for instance, on the eyebrows and the terminals on the eyebrows.
yes, all that's tantalising.
Yes.
Yes.
It looks as though it's going to be a cast bronze eyebrow with furrowing,
yes.
and you can get some idea of the little beast on the end. What did you think of that? This style?
Well, it's
representation?
beautiful. It's a beautifully preserved, perfect little gem, really. Those animal heads on the ends of the eyebrows, and they have a good deal of stylistic character, and would be as good evidence for dating the helmet as almost anything, I think, apart from the interlace down the nasal, which also has got a lot of style character, but is much less dateable, I think, than the animal style.
It has got these pointed loops that you get in
yes,
the
I think
Northumbrian
that's right,
Arctic,
yes,
isn't it?
but you do get them lasting. I mean, they go on into late sort of Viking art. You get that style of interlace. But it's beautifully preserved, and one of the things that occurred to me straight away was that you might have preserved inside it the lining of the helmet. I mean, it's quite a big cap, and it's very high, isn't it? it's an elevated, tall
yes.
cap, and that would be necessary to accommodate the padding or lining inside the helmet, which gives you a bit of extra strength and protection, I suppose. And it would be interesting to know if any of that has remained inside the helmet, or whether it was something that you could take out.
Yes.
A removable lining or padding, which
critical to
could
know.
have been
really.
taken out. Yes.
I don't know how much of that were there, if any, and it's going to be rather difficult to pick it up on X-ray.
No, but it's interesting to know if the helmet was thrown away, or
Yes.
thrown away as unserviceable or damaged or something like that, or how it came to be in the bottom of this well.
Yes, what are your theories, Peter, about the context of this pit? What are your favourite theories about this now?
Well, it seems a fairly straightforward picture at first sight. You've got a square pit, just under a metre square. It has a lining. The sides are lined with upright planks, and there's of course no lining on the floor, just simply clay. And in it there was the helm. Unfortunately I didn't see it, but I gather it was pointing slightly downwards, not perhaps how you would put it if you were actually putting it into this pit. And near it there was also a spear, an iron spear with the very elegant long shape that you often get in the 7th century series. There were also some other objects above it in the clay and organic material that was in the pit. Unfortunately, it was discovered by a machine which had sheared off the top of the pit, and there was only some 20 centimetres of this left, but at least enough for us to look at the kind of material in which it lay. And that contained, amongst other things, a disc of wood with 5 holes in it, and an antler, for instance, a sawn-off antler. I believe there were some pieces of daub and 1 or 2 other bits of organic material, twigs and branches and so forth. So it's a little difficult, really, to decide what this pit is. Bones were preserved in it, animal bones, and so I think there's very little doubt that it wasn't a grave. There was no burial there at all. It could have been a well. It was dug down into the clay in the way that an adjacent barrel-lined well was, to more or less the same depth. It could have been some kind of store if this had been a domestic situation, and of course we have no idea what was above at all. It could have been some kind of pit which was subsequently used for the disposal of rubbish, or into which these things had fallen. It's extremely difficult to be sure. The only hope I think we've got at the moment of finding out the nature of the deposit is through the examination of the soil in the pit. All the material there has been kept, it's bagged up, and it's going to the environmental laboratory, where we're going to devise ways of looking at it, first for artifacts and so forth, and secondly for biological evidence, and indeed for anything else we can think of. But that might eventually give a clue as to the nature of the deposit and how the things got there.
Yes, you're not inclined in any way to regard it as a ritual deposit, like a votive offering in a bog or by a riverside or anything like that.
Well, I think there's no evidence in that direction at the moment. It's a possibility. I think what we ought to do now is just to list all the possible scenarios and see if the environmental evidence can give us a hint.
Yes. I thought of offering a prize to any student who would construct the best imaginative science fiction scenario to account for all this.
Perhaps you can do that and send us the results, and we'll pick the best one. But for the time being, in fact, I think we are simply recording everything that is there, and we will put together all the theories that we can.
What do you know about this personal name, this Ozhere?
Ozhere. Well, this,
Ozhere, is it?
if you look it up in Searle, you'll find I think there are about 11 recorded Ozheres. There's only one of about the date of the helmet. Dr. Roosmith hasn't actually yet told us what he thinks the date might be, but I think opinion is hovering around the year 700. In fact, there was an Ozhere who was a king of the Wiki, or Witchy, I don't know, Witchy. I would pronounce it Witchy, is it? Yes, I'm not an Anglo-Saxon scholar, I'm afraid. But Witchy, he was a sub-regulus, and he was signing charters. I think there are 2 of them in Sawyer's Anglo-Saxon charters. One was 680 and the other was 693. So those are very close to the
They
date
are,
of the helmet.
yes.
The others are all later. Several of them are Kentish people, and I think several of them are 100, 150 years later than that. So, yes, there is somebody of that name
Yes.
living about that time somewhere else,
Who would be of the status in society to have an object of that quality.
or to be handing out objects of that quality
Yes,
to followers.
indeed. Yes, of course, until you know what the inscription means, I suppose there's always a chance that this was, not his, but given by him to somebody else.
Quite
But
right.
much depends, therefore, upon the art historical dating. Why do you say about 700, Rupert?
Well, I didn't say that, as Peter did. But no, I think from both the point of view of the paleography of the inscription, the letter forms and so on, the mere fact that the inscription is in Latin and in sort of Anglo-Saxon majuscule script, and the letter forms and the art style of the interlace and the birds' heads, the animal heads on the ends of the eyebrows, which is quite distinctive. It must be around the end of the 7th century, I would think. And if it is that date, then it can hardly be a votive deposit, and it can hardly be a burial.
No,
And
I was thinking of the old story which used to be put out about Sutton Hoo, that the Sutton Hoo king was buried somewhere else, but his pagan followers gave him the pagan burial of his goods. And in this case, it would be this helmet and spear, a sort of token thing for the old pagan beliefs, but you don't think anything like that is likely?
Well, I think Sutton Hoo's a different situation, because that's after all 625 or
on
something
the
like that.
borderline.
It's on the edge of the conversion, when the whole thing's ambivalent, and when people were for the first time being buried in consecrated ground, and at the same time the traditional manner of doing honour to the dead was being clung to. But then if you go down to 700, then I think you're too late for that sort of attitude to it.
Yes, the kind of dates you're favouring does seem to fit in almost too well with this Regulus. It's almost too good a story
Yes.
to be true.
Yes, it
Yes.
is remarkable.
And for all of us, for anyone who likes to connect archaeology to history, this seems too neat and glib an association, but it's a very attractive one.
It's very dangerous always, isn't it, to
Isn't it?
attach
Yeah.
an object to the odd individual's name that happens to have survived.
There are
may be
probably many
so
more
many
names.
other Osseries that we've never heard of, never
Yeah.
can hear of.
But it is remarkable that it isn't often in archaeology we get an object with a personal name. I suppose there aren't more than about a dozen Anglo-Saxon objects with names on, like
There are quite a lot
ring.
actually, aren't there? Particularly late Saxon ones, rings and knives. And
Yes, sure, there are quite a few, yes. Yeah.
but rather later for the most part.
Mm.
I think the other interesting thing, or perhaps there are several interesting things when one's talking about the date. First of all, is it a unitary object? It certainly looks it at first sight. The inscription and the various decorative motifs all seem to be of one period, and the blogging thing hasn't been repaired or added to in a way that seems to have happened with some of the Sutton Hoo heirlooms. The second thing is, all right, we may know or guess when it was made, but when actually was it put in the ground? And there may well be our help there. We do have planks, of course, from the lining of that pit, and it's conceivable that we may be able to date them by dendrochronology, which will tell you when the pit itself was dug, not when the object was sewn away. Presumably we can also do some radiocarbon dating on the contents of the pit, the twigs and so on, which will probably a much closer date to the actual date of deposition of the two objects. Beyond that, I'm not sure what we do, but
You may have enough wood in the spear shaft to get a
Yes,
radiocarbon
that's
dating
a
on.
possibility.
particularly with these new techniques,
Yes.
yes, which require such small samples.
Yes. What is its ultimate destination? Who does it actually belong to?
Well, this is very interesting. It's on the Coppergate development site, which is owned by the City Council, but is made over to Wimpey's development company on a 125-year lease. And as part of that lease, the city wrote in that archaeological finds would remain the property of the city. that agreement being in operation, this is a city object. It belongs to the City of York.
Yes.
At the moment it's in the custody of the York Archaeological Trust in a strong room, in a holding atmosphere as it were, and we shall certainly expect to keep it there for some time until ultimately we have a decision on how it's conserved and prepared for display. I think probably at the moment the likelihood is that we shall do the basic conservation here, but since there are some dents in it, courtesy of the bulldozer, we may well have to turn to specialists, for instance the British Museum, who could straighten it out and prepare it for final display.
In some ways it's very nice that it's not going to the BM but staying here in York. It would make a fine centrepiece, of course, for your new York Display Centre under Coppergate itself, wouldn't it?
Well, as it happens, it was found in an area which will be right at the beginning of our
Yes.
sequence of display, and one might almost put a cross on the floor and say this marks the spot it was found. It would be possible to display it within a foot or two of where it was found.
But wherever it is in York, it's going to be a great draw for people, international scholars and people, who for once won't have to go to London to see all the vast material.
Yes.
They'll see this in York.
Well, I think the York collections as a whole are becoming quite remarkable in terms of the quality and range of goods of this period to a certain extent. There's some marvellous objects of this period in the Yorkshire Museum, and of the Viking Age a little later on. I think at the moment one simply can't say where it will end up. There'll obviously be a decision on this after all the authorities have been consulted, and we hope that in the end it'll be in the best place for the good of the object and the benefit of the public.
Well, of course it ought to stay in York. No doubt about that at all.
I think you wouldn't dare say anything else in York, would you, Rupert?
Well,
What
no,
you say when you get back to London?
No, no, I think it's quite the proper place for it.
Splendid. That's marvellous. Well, I think now we've got a lot of work ahead of us. The current state of play is that we've been consulting all sorts of people, and it's a great pleasure to have heard what you feel about it today. I was delighted by your first remark. My God! It is a wonderful
God, I think I said that.
Good God.
Good God.
Good God. Yes,
Were you surprised in any way, Rupert? Because you heard a bit about it, I suppose, over the phone.
Well, I'd not only heard about it, but I'd seen a set of photographs and looked at them in some detail.
Yeah.
Yes.
But even so, the thing itself was a shock.
Yes.
To see that the solid object there, a large, fat, actual helmet.
Especially, of course, after you'd, at the British Museum, you'd spent so many years in the reconstruction of the shattered bits of the Sutton Hill helmet, and to see one that was whole must have been really rather extraordinary.
Yes, well, I was teed up for that by having seen the photographs and heard about it on the phone and that sort of thing.
How did you first hear about the discovery, Peter?
Well, in a very remarkable way, actually. I wasn't in York when it was found. I was in America. And I came back home, actually, the night after it was found, and got back to Heathrow early in the morning. It was one of the doves coming back from America, about 7:30, and I thought I'd ring up my wife just before she went off to work. And I got through to her, and she said, "Hello, glad you rang. I've got 2 bits of news for you. One of them is pretty bad, and the other is fantastic. Which do you want first?" And I said, "Well, I'll have the bad first, I suppose." And she said, "Well, your small daughter's been thrown from a horse and been trampled, and is in hospital with concussion," which of course is very worrying, and certainly took my attention for a minute or two. And then, if not more, she was all right actually, and was recovering quite well. But we then turned to the fantastic news. And Shelley said, "Well, if you can't have a Viking ship on Coppergate, what would you prefer to have?" Well, I think there's no answer to that, but she suggested that possibly I might have chosen a Sutton Hoo helmet, and I must admit I chose hardly to believe that one. In fact, obviously, when I saw the object, it really was almost as good as it sounded. I don't think it quite matches up to Sutton Hoo, but my goodness, it's going to be an important find which will certainly add a tremendous amount to our knowledge of early England.
It's going to be a classic piece in the history of arms and armour in all the textbooks.
Well, I think that is something to end on. It's the sort of feeling that one has in one heart of hearts. This is going to be in the forefront of our knowledge for some time.
Yes, thank you very much. This film, which we're about to see, is being filmed in the basement of the Yorkshire Museum in their laboratory. And we're seeing it here because the security arrangements in the York Archaeological Trust's own laboratories are not yet sufficiently secure for what we're about to see, and that is the Anglo-Saxon helmet from Coffergate. Peter Adderman is in this early stages talking about the nitrogenous atmosphere sealed tank with its supply of nitrogen coming in from a cylinder, which is keeping the helmet from getting oxidized. We lost the sound of him, that's why the commentary has now been added by me. The helmet is still inside here. It's soon going to be taken out and put on the bench, and then the clay taken out of it, because it's thought that the clay with its moisture is possibly causing some oxidation even within this nitrogenous atmosphere in this tank. And every time it comes out into the air from this tank, this is liable to start again. Here we see the nitrogen bubbling in this from these various pipes which Peter Adderman is here talking about. This operation is going to have a team of several people, Julie Jones and Jim Spriggs from the Trust's laboratory, and Dominic Tweddle giving some art historical comment. One very important feature of what you're going to see is the use of the thermogram. This is a computerized picture built up from impulses from a body scanner. This is a form of differential X-ray of sort of slices through the helmet, which we should be seeing during the film. And the removal of the clay has followed the sequence of these thermograms. So in fact you're working to a picture, and this is of course something of the ideal of archaeological excavation, to be able to excavate to a predicted pattern and checking a hypothesis. The hypothesis in this case provided by the thermogram, and the excavation following it through in stages. The whole of this film was taken over 2.5 days. Lorna Watts sat up in the corner of the room with the video camera and took film at intervals to show the various stages of how Julie followed the thermogram with other people putting bits and samples into bags.
You're all right?
Mm.
Okay.
Right, well, let's turn the gas off and get the nuts unscrewed.
Yes,
Aspirator. Catch that last one when it comes out.
These are the pictures of the X-rays of the helmet, which is in there. That one by the body scanner. The different levels of the scan showing the computerized diagrams here.
Right, you've got the lid off now. Taking the turkey out of the oven at Christmas, isn't it?
Transfer it onto the chroma trace. And facing out. down the tray,
How are we
because I'd rather not move it.
Yes.
We're going to then mark out points to do the drawing, to draw the interior as we excavate.
How are we going to support this thing as we
We've
go
got
along?
pieces of plasticine to build a tower to keep it up as we go along.
Because obviously
That
that
will
hinge
work.
is very
Yes.
delicate now.
So we hope that will work. The plasticine's in there.
Good.
Right, so I'll just go and get a stool and
On we
start the
go.
work. Suppose drawing a section from
Mm.
nose to the
That would
end
be,
of there,
that would be possible, wouldn't it? Yes.
and then the bottom line. We can use that. As long as we have these all fixed on here. Where to position it in case it moves.
We considered drawing the thing inside a frame, but that would have inhibited Julia from actually getting at the interior. We thought of some means of projecting them onto a baseboard, but obviously we've got to support the helmet and there'll be material falling from it which will inhibit any drawing that way. And so what we eventually decided is to do a sort of 3D recording from points on the helmet which we don't think will shift. Those are the tip of the nose guard, perhaps the corner of the eyepiece, and a piece at the back, a angle at the back where the corrosion starts, so that we shall get a reasonably accurate record of where things are within the helmet. We're looking at this, are we?
Like this.
Well, we've got here examples of the two types of tomogram that were done for us by the York County Hospital, York District Hospital. This is the computer one, that is what's usually called a body scanner, and these are the first 4 scans that it did, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And so this is a slice vertically through the helmet, right at this end. So we're actually getting the nose guard there and some of the clay on number 2. On number 3 we've gone another centimetre down, and we've not only got the nose guard, but we've got part of the cheek piece there and more of the clay. Number 4 here has gone further down still. We've actually just picked up here the hinge on the cheek piece. Is that right? Yes, that's the cheek piece. This is the back of the helmet. I was wrong. And here on number 5 we've gone a little further down. We're starting to get really the shape of the helmet as a whole. Still got the nose guard. We've got the side of it there. We've got more of the cheek piece here, and you can still see the clay within it. Now that gives you one kind of information. These are of course reduced in scale. This one is what's called a conventional tomograph, and it's done by swinging with the object in the middle, swinging plates under the object while the X-ray source swings above it, and you can get a constantly focused picture over the interior of an object like this. You can actually see the ribs of the helmet's crest there. You can see the outline of the cheek piece that lies inside it. You can see some of the little clasps that seem to run along the side of these cheek pieces. The back edge of the cheek piece is apparently to attach the male neck guard. Here you can see the main mass of the male, and even individual links are showing, particularly this one here, which is evidently some kind of special attachment link, we think. You can also see the bottom edge of the helmet. It shows up better on some of the other tomograms. We've got about a dozen of them, but you can actually see the little loops there that are in fact the first loops of the chain of the male. And here you can see the hinge by which the cheek piece is attached. So this particular tomograph shows an enormous amount. It also shows the plates, of course, the plate structure of the helmet, and it's quite a useful one for Julie to be using at this stage in her investigations. A general picture of where the male lies in effect and where the cheek piece lies on this one, on these individual slices, which she'll be really doing in real life in a few minutes when she starts cutting out the clay.
Cleaned up to this section, which corresponds on our computer tomograph tomograms to sequence number 4 or sequence number 5, you can see quite clearly the clay coming up to a dark soil line. Here, the areas which show on the tomogram as very dark, non-dense areas turn out to be here a piece of wood, and there coming in horizontally a piece of charcoal, which can be clearly seen on the radiographs above. Above the clay, we've now photographed the striations which appear along the top as we're cleaning down the black loose soil from above, and you can also see the chainmail folded back in on itself up inside the helmet. The next step will be to excavate the clay inside, following again the sequence numbers that the hospital has produced.
Footmarks is now
Say what you're doing.
takes into place.
I'm just pointing out these striation marks in the top of the clay in the horizontal plane, which we're thinking may be similar to varves.
Varves.
Barbs.
These are thin layers that have built up as the clay has accumulated in it.
And I think what we may be seeing is the section that's been cut of the clay is an oblique section through these barbs. See what I'm... And you're not seeing them in oblique section.
Yes.
Bag 3 is still all right.
Bag 3 is
Still getting
perfectly
strong.
all right. Yes, we're just really beginning bag 3.
It was over half full with this stuff.
It's very sticky.
Sample E. Those two
That's it.
gritty bits. Okay.
Very pure clay. I just don't understand where it comes from. Unless it's a very fine silt that's washed in through the edge of the pit.
Very similar to the stuff which was packed around the Viking Barrel well we had during the excavation. It doesn't look like pure clay. I think they dug pure clay out.
Is lying into the section about 4 centimeters long, 3 wide, and we've taken the piece of wood out as carefully as possible from the clay, which is rather sticky at this time, and are storing it separately so that someone can look at it at a later date.
You could find one of those early series shatters in there. Very nice.
Size 6, I can see above the area of wood that we found there is something metallic. Don't know what it is yet, but I'll keep my eyes open for it.
Clay then.
That
Twigs and so on.
Yes, it seems to be much more of that in pit, so we'll have to compare it with the ones we've already got in the samples in the environmental unit. Really predict where these things are going to turn up. I think archaeologists have always wanted some method of seeing into the ground before they dug and being able to predict what was there. It's causing the helmet to move. Now we've got the cheek piece here that is actually supported on the plasticine. And that's moving in a slightly different plane. So this is putting some sort of pressure on the hinges. I think that obviously ought to be worrying us at the moment. Supporting this with a piece of acid-free tissue between my hand and the helmet itself. And this enables Julie to cut a little bit more firmly without putting extra pressure on the hinge, which we were worried about a few minutes ago. Julie's now got well into the helmet on this particular slice, and we're beginning to see the interior surface. In fact, the iron there is in just about the same condition as the outside was when we first found this a month ago on the 12th of May. There has been some surface change on the rest of the helmet since then, and one's reminded of the difference by seeing this fresh just now. You can also see the back of the hinge of the missing cheek piece. The upper part of the hinge is still there. It's attached very neatly with a couple of rivets with neatly finished off flat heads on the upper edge. We're seeing that from the back on the inside.
Up to through to our second spit here, which corresponds to sequence number 7, or partly number 6, 6, 7. You can see in this area we've got the gap, the chainmail coming up under here. The dark area was a piece of wood, and the continuing mottled area here seems also to be pieces of wood which are underneath the cheek piece here. We've got the cheek piece supported on plasticine, if you're wondering what this white pillar is. And the next stage will be, again, to take it back another spit, see if we can correspond to sequence number 8 and 9, and then examine the helmet and decide probably to proceed and take a section out in this direction, cutting back like that, removing the soil from the left-hand side to expose a section along that plane.
We'll just have a close-up of this side, because we've not had much from this direction yet.
Yes, you can see
You can see here
nose
pieces of wood, the nose guard very clearly.
crest.
Inside, the hinge has been well exposed, if you can manage to see that. This is all the mottled area in here, mottled disturbed area with wood, and the rest is fairly pure clay.
You can see very well the problem we've got with that cheek piece supporting it, because the hinge isn't really as strong as it might be.
Yeah, there's a
There's a
piece
certain amount
missing.
of corrosion on it and there's a bit missing. That's where we've been worried a little.
I'll just swing around a bit so you can see what our normal angle of vision is and how it relates to the rest of the object.
To this section, which corresponds with sequence number 11 on the tomogram. You can see in this section, on the lower half, an area of black organic material which is quite crumbly, possibly soil, possibly organic remains. We think it corresponds to where a lining might have been originally. Then there's the clay fill, and the upper area shows the chainmail, which has been folded in on itself, and to the right of the chainmail, another area of black disturbance, which incorporates wood and quite a gritty soil as well, gritty black organic mass. We found in the lower layer as well a very well preserved beetle. We've kept a small section of this in position for examination later on, and we have saved all the soil and bagged it separately from the clay for examination elsewhere. That will be to clean out the back of the helmet where an area, a section of the helmet itself is missing. Through that hole we can now see the chainmail and the other cheek piece lying in the back. We'll do this tomorrow morning. We'll clean that area, pack it well, then turn the whole helmet over and begin excavating again, but turned completely upside down, excavating inwards again. Ready to start. We've turned the helmet round so that you can see the back view here. The aim is to clean up the loose pieces here which are falling off, pack the area well with acid-free tissue, and then turn the helmet over and begin again from the other side. So now we'll start cleaning this up and recording the loose pieces as we go. So, I get it back, I suppose, I don't. There's several sorts of bits of loose material here. One which is green corrosion product that looks slightly powdery. Throw the bag separately. Fragments of green. It occurs mostly around the iron cheek piece. On the edges, this will be kept as a soil bag. Yellowy green material. We removed some of the black organic loose stuff which we found between the helmet and the chainmail on the other side there. removed the loose bits, we found some small fragments of iron, some of which seem to have become detached from that area, and some from the inside of the helmet that were flaking off. We've labeled them, bagged them up. Now we'll pack this with acid-free tissue. This area, you can see that the cheek piece itself is in fairly poor condition. We've only been able to see the outline of the cheek piece on the tomograms, and we can now see that this has all been cracked and fairly badly corroded.
Any across there? And just a couple of
We can
black
put the
swabs.
tissue, yes, but I don't think that will really... The best thing to do would be to get another box, or possibly we can use the lid, put it on the top and turn the...
Yes, that's the
No?
answer.
No, not possible. How about if you hold the... Can I just lift it
I
and see
think
how heavy it
if we
is?
were to put that there, it would at least stop it falling back. I mean, it's going to start flipping up this way as it goes
I
over.
think someone will have to hold it in
Yes,
position.
that's right.
Um,
Now, on to what are we going to put it?
the thing is that we really want to be doing this where people can get at both sides, don't we?
I think this is one to record on your machine.
Do you want to be
it's on the
holding
moment, but I don't think I'll get it turning over because Dominic's got
Yes,
to
because
be
I
up front.
You might get a dramatic picture of the thing collapsing there.
No, go ahead, Dominic. I can't think any...
You,
when
what's the best strategy? I think if I hold this, and do you feel that you can
you just
hold
want
the
a
cheek
hand
piece?
there.
We want to stop the
Yeah,
cheek piece
I understand
flapping
that.
up down. I'll put it along the length of the cheek piece if you can manage it. And your hand tap that.
The only trouble is then you can't see whether the cheek piece is
And he's going
floating.
to have to do it by
I can see
feel.
Feel, you can see,
Yeah.
okay. So I can't see it. Now, I've lifted it up. You get it?
Well, at the moment.
I'm just moving my hands around to the other side. Are we all right?
The cheek piece is really something there. The box itself in the shape. I've got to get my hand out.
Okay. And it turned out it's now resting on the pad. And the helmet has been turned over.
Successfully.
What was that in the crunch? Before we vanished. Someone given that a quick
Let's
lick
have a
as
quick
well.
look. What's it
Yeah.
say? What's it say?
This
Another
is
one
the
of
first
the
time
decorative
the
Yes,
inscription
yes,
on
yes,
this
yes.
side has been visible.
And there appears to be a letter right down there. And it needs something. N-N-O-M-I-N-E.
Domino, it should be.
Domini, D-N-I, so that's the suspension of that next word.
That's very
Yes.
exciting. In the name of the Lord. Yes. That's terrifically exciting.
And when that stuff comes off, we'll get the rest of the inscription in one. Yes. And DNI,
DNI.
which is the normal suspension.
DNI, then stop, and then it's
then a stop.
N something. N-O.
Nostri, I suppose.
Nostri.
In Nostri.
Possibly.
Possibly.
It ends up with an S at this end, and it's got a little another little swag of decoration around here on the termination. That's terrifically exciting. Look, there's the second head with its very nice little eye. It's different from the other one.
Yes, it's got a diluted back,
Mm.
sort of spiral back,
Yeah.
which means it's first half of the 8th century probably.
Oh, splendid. And these things are really quite well preserved, aren't they? I thought this is the moment to take another photograph looking in that direction.
Yes,
isn't
we
it?
probably ought to get some record of this.
Yes, here's a patch or something. Gosh.
Now, can we see
That's why
I would
on,
suspect
on the
I
other
would-
cheek piece there's a
Yeah.
small
Sutton
rivet
Hoo?
that shows up.
Sutton Hoo has a loop at the bottom, or a hole there, with two ties under the chin. This one doesn't appear to have them.
It's the first time we've actually seen inside the cheek piece, isn't it? That's right. It's over. It's really good. It's over. That's really beautiful.
I
think the Sutton Hoo crest, if you actually hit it with the sword, it would probably just fly off, because they reckoned that it was sweated into place rather than being brazed or anything else. It would just come off, I suspect.
I mean, this is the
It's just like
structure
the
as a
paper
whole
models.
which is strong.
Yes, indeed.
Now that we've got an actual inscription, which is a manuscript type thing in Nomine Domini, we might be able to find those exact words on a manuscript in that exact script. And see if we can compare it more accurately that way. And it might be something between the eyes and between the...
But that's going to be in splendid condition. It's about as good a piece of bronze as I've ever seen.
And then I think the interlace might do one or two interesting things at the top. I just wonder what that is.
Well, have you seen this,
Come up
Dominic?
and come up.
We can get the light around. It's
How about a fiber optic?
fibre optic. There, it's got the animals with the hatched bodies.
Hatched ribbon bodies, which is excellent.
I just saw that yesterday.
So
It's
that's the
very
first time
terrific.
you've seen this?
Yes, indeed.
And in
This
this we've
side,
probably
yes.
got a...
Right.
The head in the corner.
Also coming back is
Yes,
treated
back.
treated as going into the ridges.
It's going to be a very dramatic little head, that.
And here you can see that the eye's got a comma shape coming back like that.
As in the animal head. The famed animal head.
The thing that turning the helmet over has taught us is we get a better view of the structure from this side. From the other side, one of the plates, as you have seen already, is torn away by the bulldozer. On this side, the construction is absolutely intact, and we can see the iron strip which underlies the crest, crossed underneath it by a second iron strip under the crosspiece, and with a broad iron strip around forming a headband. And we can see that the eyebrows have been cut into that, but they haven't penetrated to its full depth, so it still retains its structural strength, and this may explain why the crest is such an insignificant feature. The other thing we've been able to do is to read more of the inscription which is on the crest and on the crosspiece. We've been able to read it from this point to about here, and it reads in Nomine Domini, the word Domini being contracted to DNI, which is the normal abbreviation of it in the late 7th and 8th centuries. So that's an important addition to the information that we have about the helmet so far. It reinforces the idea it must be Christian, which we had from the word Amen on the crest inscription. We've also been able to see some detail, decorative detail, on the ends of the inscription bindings just here, a little incised decoration there. At this stage we can also make out more detail of the interlace and animal head decoration on the nasal. It looked at first sight as if it was just going to be a straightforward interlace running up the nasal, but we can now see two ribbon-like animal bodies symmetrically placed, and these are hatched. This is typical of late 7th, early 8th century animal ornament, so that's going to be quite interesting when that is cleaned further, and we can see the detail of the heads, hopefully. On this head, forming the end of the crest, we can make out the eye, which is slightly comma-shaped, and presume there'll be another one here, and then the ears running back into the edge binding of this inscription.
Okay, we're now digging the clay out, bringing the face parallel to the new plane of the helmet, and we've excavated clay down to an area where there's black organic soil, some more of the hard green concretions between the black organic and the clay, and we've exposed far more detail of the chainmail as it's lying folded up under here, and also an area of very dense black loose soil which incorporates charcoal and small stones. And even here you can see the beginning of a non-iron, probably piece of stone that's coming up. And really bringing this along to hopefully soon a flat section that can be photographed and recorded. The clay is very sticky here. it's kept a lot of its moisture, which had probably gone from the outside, and it's really quite hard to work with because it sticks to everything. And down here, I shall bring. This is what the black material is, which has been lining the helmet. Possibly remains of an organic lining, but it could also just be soil deposition in the gap. Okay, we'll record.
Just thought we'd get some great, just let me know.
And record.
The area of clay back now into the crown of the helmet. You can see here we've exposed quite a bit of the chain mail. Over the chain mail is an area of black organic material. Behind the eyes we have 2 pockets of black organic material which incorporates carbonized or charred wood, and also a piece of bone on the upper area there. The lining you can see now continues all the way around the helmet, and in this area here we've got the cheek piece coming up. This corresponds to our tomograms, probably this area on sequence number 15. We've cleaned up now, cleaned the clay back a bit more to another spit. You can see that this corresponds with sequence 14 and 15 on the tomograms to the upper right hand corner. What we can see here is a stone, which corresponds to a light area on the tomogram, a very good patch of the chain mail. You can see the folds quite clearly where it's lying. The cheek piece coming out on the bottom, the black organic material coming all the way around, and here the very clear pockets where the black material comes behind the eyepieces. And this is full of organic stuff, a bone up there and a piece of wood down here. Now it's coming up on this side as well, and as I've been taking out the clay, we've noticed in fact that the whole thing is moving a bit. So what I'm going to try to do is move this lot of clay forward and pick the entire piece up, quoted from below. And there it is. Now that shows the sort of deposits that you're getting. You see, it's one small piece. Do we want to put that on top of the bag, I guess? We have a piece of black material which came away. You can see bits of, looks like root, I suppose, or twig.
I don't understand. Can you put on this light on? Kids, down by your foot.
Greenish yellow material and black material, which we're separating into bags so that people can examine them. You can see very clearly the cheek piece lying. It's rather badly broken, which we could see from the other side. Mail's lying on top of it. You can see the hinges coming up quite clearly. With the central piece coming along there. Your side pieces with rivets, and the plates filling in, which are triangles with the corners cut off and neatly riveted into place. With the chainmail lying here on top of the cheek piece, I don't know whether you can see in this, is that in the center of the cheek piece is a small round-headed rivet, which corresponds to the square-headed rivet here on this cheek piece. The chainmail is free on that side and attached by 2 links here. The third link has become detached and moves quite freely. The cheek piece here is broken. What we're going to try and aim to do is to raise the chainmail off the cheek piece and then take that detached cheek piece out clearly, which we can pick up separately later on. Move that down there.
It's now about 4:30 on the second day of the excavation, and in fact the excavation of the interior of the helmet is now complete. Julie is just finishing cleaning loose fragments from the inside of the helmet, which now consists of just the main shell of the helmet with the chainmail still attached by 3 or 4 links along the rear edge, still lying inside the helmet. We're now going to fold up for the weekend. The helmet will be put back into its airtight chamber and the nitrogen supply coupled up, but instead of keeping the helmet wet as we'd done previously for the sake of any organic material that may have been inside, we're now going to slowly dry the helmet out for the sake of the metal, which was beginning to corrode, as you saw earlier. We'll be doing this by putting small amounts of silica gel in the airtight container with the helmet, and as days go by we'll replace the silica gel and put in larger quantities until eventually the metal will be more or less desiccated. We hope then that the helmet will be safe enough to be able to be worked on in the open laboratory and photographed and studied and so on without the risk of corrosion occurring. This was always a problem during the pre-excavation stage. The next main phase in the process will be the conservation, but before we do that there will be a consultation interlude when all those interested both in the conservation and also in the scientific analytical work which can be carried out on the object, they will be consulted. We will have meetings probably in York with the object in front of people, and we will be able to decide exactly where to go from here.
Here is a close-up of the helmet showing the rib, and you should be able to see the lettering of the inscription. Would you like to say something about the inscription, Dominic? Of what we can see from here?
Yes, the inscription, you'll see part of an inscription which starts here and ends there and reads in nomine Domini IHU, which is a contraction for Jesus, and that's there, IHU, and then finally finishing up SCS, which is Sanctus, and SPS, which is the normal contraction of Spiritus.
We're in even more closely to the inscription here, and you should be able to see details of the lettering more clearly there. Would you like to say something, Dominic, about the technique of this inscription, how it is that we're seeing it? Is it raised or what?
Well, it's done in repoussé, and I think the inscription has been laid out on the reverse of the strip, and then the strip has been turned over and laid down, which means that for the most part it's back to front.
Yes.
In fact, this section that you're looking at is the one section we've been able to find where only some letters are reversed, but not the whole inscription. The form of the letters is interesting, since they're in what is called a Northumbrian display script, which broadly dates to the late 7th and, say, first 30 or 40 years of the 8th century. So we should be able to link those up to manuscript art quite easily.
Yes, this is a very interesting linking of the dating of the lettering itself and the art styles of the rest of the decoration, isn't it? It's nice to have these independent methods of dating. For once we don't have to rely on radiocarbon and things of that kind. Thank you, Dominic. Just a last shot, even closer, to show the details of the letters at this end of the strip. Well, the next stage in this film of the York helmet is in the Castle Museum, and in camera is the helmet and Sonia O'Connor of the York Archaeological Trust, who is now working on the second stage of the cleaning. We last saw the helmet in June when it was in the basement of the Yorkshire Museum, and now we find it in the Castle Museum. Can you say something, Sonia, first, of what has happened to it since then, and the various problems about security and transit and things of that kind?
Yes, certainly. Well, as you saw before, Julie excavated the soil from the helmet. Once this was done, this enabled us to dehydrate the helmet, and this halted a lot of problems we were having when the helmet was taken out for photography, because being damp, it did corrode rather readily. Once the soil was out and we were able to keep it dry, we then were in a position to not worry about the nitrogen atmosphere, as we'd broken the corrosion cycles by removing water. So eventually we did actually dispense with the nitrogen cylinders. However, the helmet, after Julie worked on it, resided in the vaults of the Yorkshire Museum, where we were able to visit it fairly regularly to check on the humidity in its container, and eventually, as I say, to remove the nitrogen cylinders altogether. Then we had the problem of where the helmet was going to be worked on. The facilities at the Yorkshire Museum really weren't good enough for this stage of the work. One needed a lot more room, peace and quiet, and the ability to have a lot of lighting and use microscope and so on, all things which needed electric cables and so on, just wasn't very convenient at the Yorkshire Museum. There's still some dispute as to where the helmet will eventually reside, but as it is the property of the city, it is the Castle Museum's property, I think, in the first instance. So it was, we asked if we could possibly bring the helmet over here to work on it, as the security in our own laboratory wasn't sufficient to please the insurers at the time. And this is the room that was occupied by the Castle Museum's own conservator till recently. He's left to do another training course.
Is this the place where Castle Museum's normal conservation is done of all their objects?
Yes, really. All the objects that do get worked on. This is where Mike used to work on them. So we've got a good bench, good lighting, ventilation, everything one could ask for except for the heavy equipment, which we have back at the lab, the specialist stuff, which we are unable to bring with us, which may require us taking bits of the helmet, in fact, back to, for instance, the air brazier for work on that, or the ultrasonic tank and so on. But in the meantime, I've come over here for, I suppose, I think this is about the 9th day on which I've come, and I haven't been able to come all day, all of those days, in order to do the preparatory mechanical cleaning.
So there's been a gap really of some 10 weeks between the last session of cleaning.
Yes, yes. Really, whilst I think the various insurance and security and ownership discussions were going on.
Yes. And what sort of atmosphere have you been able to keep it in during that time and now? Has this changed?
Well, as I say, we were keeping it in nitrogen, but once it was totally dehydrated, the need for that, that was really superseded. And so we were able to keep it in air, but in this dehydrated atmosphere, in the sealed container.
And now, when you're not working on it now, it goes back in this sealed container.
It goes back into the container.
So damp is the real enemy.
Yes, and when it was damp earlier, very, very damp, every time it was taken out for photography, it did suffer. Now it doesn't seem to be suffering at all in the periods of time in which I'm working on it. But we always take precaution of putting it back into the very dry atmosphere afterwards.
I suppose that the process of deterioration begins as soon as it comes out of the ground. And would you say it's been totally arrested now? And is it now stable after the several months since it came out?
It's more stable in that it itself is quite dry.
Yeah.
Were it to get damp again, and just sitting out in this room, for instance, for long periods will be causing changes. There may also be slow changes due to some of the corrosion products on the helmet changing their oxidation state, perhaps. It certainly isn't stable in the sense that we use it normally in conservation. It will still require a special atmosphere for storage or display at this state. We have to face the problems of actually stabilising this object later on in its conservation process.
Yes, right. Good. Well, we'll move in a little bit closer. Well, would you like to say something now about the current processes of cleaning and consolidation? We see the helmet now from one side, and we're going to make a kind of tour of the helmet, turning it round and showing the things that you're currently doing, Sonia, and the problems of doing these in relation to conservation and display. So could you show us what exactly you have been doing to it now?
Right. Well, our first problem in the conservation was deciding really whose the object was, because different people have different wants from an object like this. One would take the conservation to a different level depending on whether it was purely for study or for display. We consulted with various people, although the problems of the actual cleaning of this helmet are no difficulty to us at all. They're nothing new. We're quite used to metals in this condition from Coppergate. We did want to consult with all the people that had an interest in the helmet, so that nobody could say that it wasn't done the way they would have liked it to have been done.
But it's fortunate in a way, isn't it, that you've had all the experience of the Coppergate object before this?
Well, it's more or less what the British Museum said. They reckon we were in a much better position, say, to handle this helmet than they, because we knew metal like this very well, which they didn't.
From the same kind of deposits.
Exactly.
That's rather fortunate.
The whole reason that this is so beautifully preserved is, of course, those waterlogged conditions that prevail on Coppergate. So one of our first decisions was, if there is iron underneath the corrosion, which we were pretty sure there was, as we were getting very strong magnetic attraction from this, were we going to clean down to a shiny metal finish or not? And that really depends on people's preferences, and also it depends on the condition of the metal and the corrosion layers above it. As it turns out, there is a very nice compact black corrosion layer above the iron here. It's breached in places. You may be able to get the sheen just on here and there, where I think it has been disrupted, and these areas correspond very much with the rusty, dusty corrosion product we've got here, which is, I think, probably of all a very recent date, i.e. since the thing has been excavated.
Yes, right.
There are striations in this black corrosion product which could be surface detail, which if we removed this corrosion product we would probably lose as well. It probably isn't on the metal surface. So there's some good reasons for keeping this black, although rather mottled surface.
Yes, right.
Also, maintaining this surface would probably be rather easier than trying to maintain a bright, shiny metal surface. As you know, if you expose an iron billet to just damp air, it'll very soon dull and probably get a rusty hue to it in a short time.
I expect originally it was only polished on special occasions.
Possibly, it may well have been coated. Some of our analyses suggest that it may have received a coating. Otherwise it would have gone very rusty if you went out to fight in the rain.
You don't think this black coating is any residue of such a coating?
At the moment we're only getting typical iron corrosion analyses from it, but apart from a rather unusually high traces of, I think it's arsenic and something else, I can't remember, but we want to have everything looked at in much greater detail once we've cleaned up. So we consulted with various people, the Yorkshire Museum, we consulted with the British Museum, we consulted with the Ancient Monuments Lab, mainly there from the point of view of what analyses we should do before we actually start removing the corrosion products. Because occasionally the corrosion products themselves can give us information about what has happened to the object, which, if it's removed, we may not be able to pick up from the object itself. So everybody consulted. We got the helmet over here with the aid of a security firm, and I set to work.
Has the current valuation gone up since the £1 million of June?
It's gone down. I believe it's now insured for £500,000. I don't believe that either. But we have to take precautions,
yes,
of course.
Yes, utmost security.
It's kept locked away here in a very high security area of the museum. And only one of the keepers can let me in and out. And when it comes here, we have to lock all the intervening doors, and it's very complicated. But the museum have gone to a lot of trouble to make it very easy for me to work here. I can virtually come in when I please, as long as it's during the working day, and I have my own keys, which has been marvellous. Very flexible arrangement. So despite the security, it isn't too much of a problem. So, the first thing I did when I started work on this helmet was to remove the loose soil from the top of the helmet using a scalpel and various sorts of brushes. We've got the glass bristle brush and just a stiff artist brush here, and again another one just for removing the loose. Once I'd done that, I was in a position to make some decisions about the level to which I was going to take this first stage of the mechanical cleaning. I identified the compact black corrosion there, which we often get on this type of ironwork, and decided to clean down to that layer. I removed the rusty coloured corrosion dust, sort of powdery finish here. You can still see that it has rather disrupted the black, but I think it's quite a reasonable surface. Now what I'm doing there, I am exposing the detail of the helmet. I'm trying to get the maximum information about how it was made displayed. That's the rationale behind that sort of move. I then moved on to the possible, we think they're brass at the moment, fittings around the eye and across the bottom of the helmet.
Brass rather than bronze?
Yes, one analysis we've had done at the moment, and that showed that it was a brass rather than a bronze.
Yes.
But we haven't had every single piece analysed, and I think we are going to find differences between some of the rivets and some of the actual fittings. So that's something we'll have to look at later again. I clean this again using the scalpel to remove the large clods of soil and the various brushes to clean down to the surface of the brass. You can see it's a rather blotchy finish. We've got a very brassy finish here. We've got quite compact black corrosion here. We've got black sulphide tarnish on here. And at the moment, again, I have cleaned to show maximum information. We're looking at the rivets, for instance, the joins between the different elements of the moulded piece. But I'm not cleaning for a bright, shiny finish. Now, this may well be required of us when this object is going for display, that the brass should be all of one colour. We get rid of the blotchiness, in which case all we can do is clean down for the brassy finish. And we may well have to do that using localised chemical action, in which case, again, we'll wait to do that after we've done all the analyses, when we're quite happy that all that work's been done, as we've no wish to bias any analysis of these fittings. I started with the first quarter of the helmet. I chose the front left, that's the left of the helmet. Because this was the way the helmet was lying. I don't want to turn the helmet over because of pieces like this, which are being bent out of position. This has no metal in it at all. You see the magnet is grabbed very much, but here there's absolutely no metal in this fitting at all, nothing. It's very, very weak. It's pure corrosion. It is corrosion which is in the shape of the iron itself, which again is typical of ironwork which is corroded in the manner that it does on Coppergate, in fact. We get this sort of replacement. So I started with this top corner. Sorry, quarter, not corner, there's no corners really. And I cleaned the inscription as well. Again, just removing the obscuring dirt and corrosion. And we discovered some very nice details, which I think we'll pick up later when you come in closer.
Yes.
Of animals' heads here, at the end here. Also, the inscription's been put in backwards. There is an inscribed line around the inscription, just inside this thick band. And it does a U-turn here. And this U-turn should be, in fact, in here.
Yes.
We can't really look at the other side yet. It's the other part of the inscription that we do have is very mangled, and I shall come on to cleaning that a little later. Dominic also says that the script is the wrong way around, so he suspected. It rather shows that he was right, I think.
Yes, does this mean that people who saw it couldn't actually read it, do you think?
Well, it makes you wonder. Perhaps somebody was asked to put it together, or maybe he put it together and thought, oh, damn.
They may have just been satisfied with the sight of lettering and knowing that it was a Christian inscription. Yes, good.
It was very, very, very good lettering. Other little details I've discovered in working on this particular quarter was a few things about the fitting itself here above on the eyebrow. For instance, we found the positions of the rivets. They've been beautifully polished. I don't think they would have shown at all when this was being worn originally. It's only now that corrosion has etched the surface enough for the edges of these rivets to really show. Perhaps this is a bad example, but there was one here in the cheek, the actual cheek of the animal, just in here, which is very difficult to spot.
Yeah.
At first I thought this whole fitting was one piece of cast metal, perhaps cast flat and then bent. But we think we've possibly got a join here, just running across here, although we can find no corresponding join on the other side at the moment. But we do now know that, in fact, this animal head is applied, and there is a line along the back where it's actually applied. It's riveted through. Everything on this helmet is riveted. It's a very, very nice job. Other details that are shown up are this dent here in the helmet. Quite what made that, I don't know. It's a very sharp little dent.
That's an original dent.
Yes, I think so. It's certainly not been caused during excavation. The corrosion products are not at all disturbed. And this nick here by the eye, which must have been made by quite a hefty blow. This, although a softer metal than the iron itself, is it's not that soft that it would have happened very easily. That sort of mark there, quite a deep nick. Right. Well, once I'd done perhaps this half of the helmet, I think my next move was in fact to clean the back up similarly down to this edge of the inscription. I decided to work on the nose piece itself, and I've removed all the soil from the decoration of the nose piece. Some interesting points in that the little marks in the interlace here are in fact heads of rivets, nicely hidden in the intricacies of the design.
Was the interlace designed around the rivets, or...?
Well, this is a question. Apparently, other examples of this type of decoration do have these dots in them, but this is perhaps manuscripts where you wouldn't be expecting rivets, but which came first is the point. I don't know. That'd be interesting to hear people argue that one out, I think. This has, having seen this, Dominic Purvill has revised his dating of this helmet somewhat.
He's put it a bit later, hasn't he?
It's a bit later, yes. He was muttering things about that.
More towards the middle of the 8th century rather than Only, is that what
I
he
can't
means?
say, I'm afraid,
No.
Philip. It's,
Well, we'll have to talk to him later about
Yeah.
his views.
yes.
What will be interesting to see is one, what places he originally dated it, and then why the
Why it's
new
revised,
information
yes.
has enabled him to put it a bit later.
Quite, yes. Which should be interesting to hear.
Mm.
Right, well, now I shall move on to the base of the helmet itself. Our next problem was, you probably remember, was a lump of chainmail inside the helmet here.
Yes.
Now, for me to work on the other side of the helmet, I have to turn it over. To do that, we were worried that we were going to have to remove the chainmail by cutting links.
Mm.
But on close examination of this, once I'd removed the soil from around this area, I was able to show that we could in fact just slip the chainmail off. The two links which held the chainmail to the helmet are in fact both split. Now these have been lapped and riveted and they sprung apart, and I'm not sure how much detail you can see from there. And
It looked as though it had actually been, the chainmail had been taken off there, did it? I mean, ripped off or just sprung apart?
I wouldn't like to say at the moment, I haven't found any broken links, but then perhaps they would have fallen off anyway, so I wouldn't find them.
Yes.
I think I'll wait till we've opened the chainmail up before going any further. I think it has been removed. Why this end was still attached then, I'm not sure. But this area of chainmail attachment plate is in fact missing anyway, and I think that it may well have been removed from the helmet before it was lost, in that it certainly wasn't in the immediate fill around the helmet, and it's a big thing to miss, I think. So,
Yes, we're looking up there now into the back of the helmet and seeing in fact, aren't we, the stain where the chainmail was tucked into the back there.
Not exactly. I'm not sure what this stain is. As you can see, it comes up and around the back in a line here, but it dips down here towards, yes, where the chainmail was lying. But the chainmail was just in this area.
Oh, and where,
so I'm not sure.
Yes, where we're seeing the tissue paper showing through the hole.
Yes, just here where my hand is.
Yes.
I'm not sure what this black line is altogether.
No.
It's a difference in the corrosion product. I think it may well turn out to relate to the black deposit that we had lying in there. If you remember, during the excavation there was this wodge of clay.
Yes,
There was also this
with
black
the
deposit.
Striations, yes, in the black material. We got that on the previous film, yes.
We'll have to look back at the tomograms of it and also the photographs and drawings of the excavation to check that one out. But I'm not sure just yet. So I was in a position then, as I say, to remove the chainmail, having found that, in fact, these links were split.
Yes. Can you just put the knife onto the chainmail now?
Yes, well, put the chainmail there.
Yes, turn the knife
Here's
straight
the
onto it,
chainmail.
yes.
I marked the links with cotton, green cotton and red cotton. There's actually a blue cotton across here, but it's just holding two smaller split links in position, so I don't want them to slip out while I'm working on other parts of the helmet. The chainmail was covered in the clay mostly. I've removed quite a bit of it mechanically with the scalpel and the brushes, and a lot of the links are free and move very, very nicely.
Yes, that's remarkably flexible now.
And we've got high hopes that we will be able to unfold this chainmail eventually. Some areas you can see still very much covered in soil and also corrosion products. This area, for instance, is quite heavily covered in a corrosion. This is the area that was actually in contact with the inside of the helmet directly and seems to have suffered worse from that point of view. And so I think this is a piece of the helmet which we will have to take back to the laboratory in order to work on it properly.
Yes, that looks like a very long job to make every link free.
That's right.
And of course, every time it moves, I suppose a certain amount of abrasion of individual links takes place.
Certainly. So we want to get this done in, I think, a fairly concentrated manner, sort of sit down and work on it for a few days and just get it done. And we'll be able to open it up. We will then be able to see just how much of the chainmail we've got.
Yes. Have you made any estimate of the number of links?
No.
It looks as though it might run perhaps into many hundreds.
It might well do.
Mm.
I've been looking at the way they've been joined. At the moment, the links on the chainmail appear to be butted links. These I mentioned earlier were lapped and riveted. There are three largish links at the end here, and then there are a couple of smaller ones. This one is in fact brass, and this one's iron, although they're both in the same row.
Yes.
I've called this row 1, and row 1 are all brass links, and they're butted joins. This is row 2. The first two are these big iron links with rivets, iron rivets, and so is the third one. Then there's a bit of a gap, and we've got two more. This one is the brass one, as I say, which is also lapped and riveted, and this one is iron and appears to be butted. So it's not a very clear picture at the moment. These links, these first two links, are linked through two links in the first row. In fact, the first three, I linked through two links in the first row. The first one was linked through three links on the chain mail. The second one was linked through one, possibly two, but as it's open, more may have slipped off. The third one is closed, but has no links through it at the moment. These may have been lost. I think these small links must have been linked directly to one, possibly two links in the chain mail, i.e. I think this area was slightly gathered.
Yes.
And I think it was gathered so that there was enough fullness in the mail for it to be linked to the cheek piece. As you can see, the cheek piece turns away.
Yes.
So you might want a bit of fullness in order to make sure that it would reach to the clips on the cheek piece. But it's not altogether clear yet. We'll probably get a lot more idea once we've been able to open the chain mail up.
Yes.
The helmet, the bottom edge of the helmet has been completely finished off with the binding of bronze, and around the cheek piece as well. The hinge is iron, but all the other fittings on the cheek piece are, I said bronze, I shall say copper alloy, as we don't at the moment actually.
Yeah.
In fact, I think this was probably brass. But some of these fittings do appear to have a slightly different colour, which would also suggest perhaps a different alloy. This plate in the middle may well have been a point of attachment for some thonging or other which would connect across the two cheek pieces. We don't know. Otherwise, I think when you run, the whole lot would flop in and out like ears. And that's what we think perhaps that was for. There's also a matching on the other cheek piece. I've cleaned around the inside of the helmet very cursorily, just to remove the loose soil and the loose corrosion. The reason I've done this at this stage is because before I continue on the outside, I will have to turn the object over. As I've explained, I don't really wish to put this edge down because of these very weak areas which are sticking out here. So what was decided was that we would mount it on a head. Now I've got a polystyrene head from the Textile Conservation Department of this museum. And
is that the one we see behind us?
That's right, totally unsuitable in shape.
First we could just show that picture for a moment. As a polystyrene head, it doesn't look too much like an 8th century Anglo-Saxon. Just put it underneath the light.
Yes, I can. There's the head. It's totally hideous.
Yes.
And
it serves as just a former.
Yes. We'll pad this out. It's much too small. We'll pad it out with wadding and cover it in stockingette. We'll then be able to slide the helmet onto it and tack the cheek piece in place onto the stockingette to support it, make sure that it doesn't flop about. And then mount the head on the board. And then I'll be able to work all around the helmet without having to put it down on the weak side. Isn't it horrible? I'll remove it.
We've now got both cheek pieces in camera, and you haven't been able to do anything to these yet, have you, Miss Sonia?
No, I've been working on the main part of the helmet, all the other pieces that we have. For instance, the plate that's detached from there
Yes.
and the cheek piece and so on, I've left as yet. You can see the condition of this cheek
Yes.
piece is not as good as the other one.
No.
It's corroded in a very similar manner
That's
to
the
this
one-
area of the helmet.
That's the one that was up inside the helmet,
That's
isn't
right,
it?
it was
Yes.
up in the back
Mm.
there. Very, very poor condition, very little iron remaining here. In
Mm.
fact, it's the brass edging which is holding the whole thing
Yes.
together over there. We do have these fragments as well.
And the other one, you haven't been able to get at the bottom of that yet because you haven't been able to turn it over.
That's right, yes.
But they are both decorated on the outside, I gather.
I don't know about decorated.
Yes, let's just
They both
have
have
some
the...
film of that corrosion because that's very heavy concretions.
yes, this is some of the worst concretions we've
Yes,
got.
what are those concretions?
I don't know. I don't know at the
They're not
moment.
mud,
I think
are they?
it's...
I mean, they're metallic concretions.
No, I think it is actually, as you say, mud and iron corrosion
Yes.
together. It's
Yes.
one running into the other very
Yes.
much. So
But it's surprising there's no decoration.
Mm,
The cheek
yes.
piece would lend itself, wouldn't it, to...
right.
mm.
At the moment, there's no evidence of that at all
Yes.
in here. But well, we'll see when we clean it up. But this will be a difficult object. May have to consolidate it before removing a lot of this external
Yes.
concretion. Again, this is a candidate for being taken back to the lab and cleaned with the abrasive, which puts a lot less strain on the object, gradually removing the corrosion literally by sandblasting, but with a very fine abrasive.
Yes.
Where with a scalpel, when you're removing this sort of corrosion, you're having to put a bit of pressure on the object in order to get at the corrosion product and flick it off. And I'm not sure that round here I'd really like to put much pressure on this particular
No. No,
object.
that's something still to come. Well, we're now seeing some detail of the nose piece with the camera in the macro position and something of the eye rim. Can we just turn it around so we can see a piece of the inscription?
You see the animals here.
What, here on the end of the
Yes,
inscription?
touching nose to nose.
I'll just try and get in, I think, a little bit closer. We're now seeing the very close range, the top of the strip holding the inscription. Can you see what it is we're looking at now, Sonia?
Yes, two little animals nose to nose. Very, very like the ones that are at the end of the eyebrows. Really rather fun. Again, they've got rivets through their cheeks. Beautifully hidden.
Mm.
Very nicely made.
Yes, very close at many times on either sides. Can we just tip it back to look at the inscription itself now? Yes, that's fine. We see now there's something of the technique of these letters with the strip on either side. Can we just roll that back? Yes.
The whole decoration is made up of three parts. The outer band, which perhaps is the body of the animals. The inscription.
Yes, we're now seeing quite a large part of the inscription quite closely. Can you say something about what we're seeing there?
Yes, what we've got is a decoration made up of three elements. We've got this outer thick band, which is, I suppose, the body of the animals, we could call it. You've got this repoussé decorated strip with the inscription on it, and you've got this thin outer band here, which is made up of another thin strip of the copper alloy with its end turned over to make this edge, and then all riveted through with rivets. Here's one, there's one on the other side, and at about sort of 2 and 3 inch intervals, and again through the cheeks of the animals at the top. The last pair of rivets, all riveted through here and through the helmet, little brass rivets. Very, very nice.
We won't attempt to give any translation of that. I think we'll leave that to Dominic.
Yes, I think so. It is rather lovely there.
Well, now we'll move round to the... Well, we're looking now close up at the lower end of the eyebrow. What about this, Sonia?
The actual animal's head and its body, which is what I call the eyebrow, is one piece of moulding. It is applied to the helmet. The brass strip along the edge is separate, so is, I think, the strip above the animal's head going out of the top of the picture. Again, it's all riveted, and again there's a rivet very, very nicely hidden through the cheek of this animal, beautifully polished in. And as I said earlier, probably only visible to us now because the corrosion has actually etched the edge of it in for us.
Yes, can you show can you reach that? It's a bit difficult to reach,
If I can. If I can reach it, I probably can't. I can't actually see it myself.
No,
but I think
no.
it's about here.
Yes, I see. Yeah, so that's a very fine animal. Rather reminiscent, in fact, of one or two pieces of sculpture. Well, I better not say things like that. Leave things like that to Dominic.
Yes.
Well, here we're seeing a close view of the top end of the nose piece, another animal.
This animal is actually separate from the eyebrows and the nose piece, which may in fact be one piece of casting, except we think we possibly got a line for a join here. Again, the binding is applied separately and riveted on. The animal too is riveted. Did you see here on the middle of its nose there's a rivet, and that passes right the way through the copper alloy nose piece and through the iron which backs it up behind. The iron of the nose piece is in fact a continuation of this band that comes up over the top of the head. It runs behind this lot and down the nose piece in one piece. There is a line here that we can see with the microscope which shows that this is actually separate to the nose piece behind.
And then moving down the nose piece itself, we are seeing intertwined animals, aren't we, there?
Again, we've got rivets hidden in the decoration, one here, and then further up the nose, another one here, and one here, I think, and one in the position opposite to that too. The animal has, well, each animal has a pair of legs. Here's one leg ending there, and another leg ending here. It's rather nicely executed.
Yes.
There's a line running along inside each of these laces. This is a central line, but it is actually missing in places. For instance, here, that line is not visible, and here, along here. Whether this is wear or whether it, in fact, was never cut, I don't know at the moment. We'll have to look more closely under the microscope at those areas to determine what is happening there.
No sign of any enamel or anything like that in this?
No inlay, no enamel, no tinning, silvering, coating of metals of any sort.
Nevertheless, I take it that you think this is very high quality work we're looking at.
Yes, it is. It's extremely good work, which makes the fact that the inscription from ear to ear has been put in incorrectly all that much more odd, I think.
Yes, it does. Yes, in cleaning up this area here, you've only really taken off very superficial dirt from among this, because it didn't look anything like as good as this when we saw it in June.
No, it's purely superficial dirt. The only corrosion in this area is really that, what is more of a tarnish perhaps, this black surfacing, which is probably a sulphide on the copper alloy itself.
But this nose piece is clearly the sort of tour de force of the whole thing, isn't it?
I think you'll be able to see very clearly now the nick in the side of the nose piece, just at the bottom of the eye here.
Yes, that's the one you suggested was caused by a blow, was it? A small blow?
Something.
I suppose that could be quite superficial though.
Yes, it could in fact have occurred when the helmet was being, I don't know, perhaps roughly cleaned up after getting dirty. Who knows?
Yes,
I mean, it depends. You know, rough handling, or it could be a blow during fighting. I don't know.
Well, we're now seeing in close up the male attachment, and now you can point out perhaps in some detail, Sonia, what it was that we were seeing from a greater distance before.
Right, okay. As I said earlier, around the edges of the helmet is this brass or copper alloy fitting strip. Around here it's been made with slits in it. It runs right round the back of the helmet, and I don't know if you can swing up here, but you can see, for instance here, you've got a band with slits cut in it. And running inside this band is an iron wire. Over the wire are attached loops. These, and through the loops are attached these links, the first line of links. And these are the butted copper alloy links of the first line. And back down this way, we've got the remains of the next row of links. Here's the first one. This is an iron link, and it has an iron rivet. It's been lapped over and riveted, and it passes through 2 of the copper alloy links in the first row. It was attached to 3 of the iron links in the helmet, in the mail itself. The next one, similarly attached, it's a riveted iron link, quite a large one, attached through 2 of the copper alloy links on the helmet, and certainly to 1 of the links on the mail, but it wasn't very clear how many more may have been on there. The next pair are also attached through 1 of these iron links, again a riveted, although I can't really show you that very clearly, a riveted link. Here we are, and you can see the rivet is still in position, lapped and riveted. Very nice, that one. This was no longer attached to the mail, but it's a similar size to the first 2, and I assume that it was actually attached to several links in the mail, as was certainly the first one and probably the second. Then we've got a gap in the loops and another link, a gap in the loops, another link, and a gap and a link. And over these we've got 2 more attached. I've tied these on so that they won't slip off. They're both actually broken. This one is a lapped and riveted link, but it's not iron as the other ones were. This one is actually a copper alloy one. I'm not sure why, because this next one, which is a similar size, is in fact an iron link. So this is the odd one out as far as material goes. But I would suggest that, in fact, these big ones were used to gather mail, as I was saying earlier, and that these smaller ones were purely sort of a one-to-one attachment between the helmet and the mail. But that's all we have in that row, definitely. We may find we have other links on the edge of the mail when we unfold it, which in fact are also of this same first row. But whether we'll be able to determine that, I'm not sure yet.
None of the other European helmets have such detail of the way in which the mail is attached, have they?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So this is really rather rare detail. While we're here, perhaps we can just move on to the corner of the cheek piece, just to see that way in which that's attached there.
Yes, this clip, I presume, clipped into these mail. It is in fact out of position now. If you see, it has 2 rivets. The bottom one, which has a rather squash-looking rivet in it, I think that's a replacement myself, and a rivet hole where the rivet is missing. Here's the corresponding hole in the cheek piece itself. So you can see this loop is actually out of position. On the other cheek piece, the the loop that's in this position, in fact, sticks out here at right angles, which would also suggest that this is where this one should be too, and that it would have linked up with the chain mail.
Yeah. Something of the process, Sonia, of the things you've been doing. What is the future treatment likely to be? What's the kind of timing of this? Obviously, we're in a very privileged position here to be able to look at it. When is the public going to see it?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I was worried you'd answer that. My part of this job may not take that much longer, provided I can get enough days over here, spare them from the laboratory. It's going to be perhaps another 10 days, something of that sort, of my work, which could be spread over 3 weeks, I suppose, something of that sort. But at that stage, we will then want to do the further analysis work, and after that we may well want to do selective chemical cleaning of particularly the brass. We then have to face the problem of stabilisation, which hasn't really been fully looked at the moment. The problems of stabilising an object like this, which has integral fittings which are of a completely different metal, are immense, and not one easily solved. And beyond that, there is the problem of reconstruction of the helmet as well. There will be a lot of pressure, I think, for the helmet to be completed, for the dents to be taken out of it, for the loose fragments to be replaced, and for this completely corroded and missing area at the back to be filled in. Now, this sort of work is something that we think we would prefer the British Museum to handle. They are the people who have had the experience in bending metals back to shape, that is, ancient metals from archaeological context, something which one wouldn't normally do, but which is required occasionally for pieces of this sort of importance. It may not be possible to bend them back if they're too corroded, and rebending will in fact just cause the object to break up. It may not be possible at all.
I suppose there might be some people who would like to see all these pieces really put together and all the missing bits filled in with fresh metal and the whole thing made to look absolutely like new. Well, there's bound to be a compromise here, isn't there?
I think there'll have to be a compromise, yes. I think also we'll try and have a replica made. Yeah. And that may take some of the pressure off making this absolutely pristine. Because it wasn't pristine when it was lost.
No, that's the point. It was in very battered condition. And of course, with making a replica, there isn't any doubt about the detail. You could make something that's really authentic. But as the best of the European helmets of the migration period, obviously one would like to see it. When one compares it with the Sutton Hoo and Bente Grange and others, it's very superb. Anyway, but in whatever condition, when can we anticipate seeing it on display anywhere?
Well, I think...
Is it going to have any kind of private showings, privileged showings to...
I don't know, but I would like to think that sometime next year we would be able to see this finished and on display, but it will depend on so many different people. People are going to do the analysis, people who will do the metal bending, and the museum, whichever one it is, who finally will be displaying it. It will depend on when they are ready to show it as well.
Has it been on television in this state yet?
Not in this state. I don't think it has actually been shown, as it were, publicly since Julie excavated the soil out of it, actually, since she last filmed, in fact.
But obviously it's now in a position where film of the kind we've just been looking at would be of great interest to the public to see this kind of detail done with professional cameras in a studio. Well, thank you very much, Sonia. That's very useful material, I think, for this archive view of the helmet. I think that we shall need another session, obviously, when you're completely finished. And also perhaps a discussion with Dominic on the art historical aspects and on the crucial business of the parallels and dating.
Right.
Thank you.
Really interested to know how you actually set out from the first look at it and deciding to...
We're now back in the Castle Museum and we're seeing the helmet again. And now we're seeing Sheena Howarth, who is drawing the helmet for the York Archaeological Trust. And she's going to tell us something about the special problems and the techniques that are used in making these drawings. She's almost finished this, so she's in a good position to tell us something about the particular questions that affect a helmet of this kind. Can you first of all tell us something, Sheena, about how long it's taken you and the special problems that you've experienced?
Well, so far it's taken about 8 days to draw it. I haven't found it too difficult. I've approached it probably more like drawing a small fine but bigger, really.
Yes.
And I've positioned the helmet so I can draw around it and used a set square and drawn it sort of almost like a pot, really,
yes.
because it's that sort of shape. And then filled in the elaborate details afterwards.
Yes, what special tools have you been using to do this? Anything different from what you've used before?
Well, using a set square much more, and calipers, and of course the human eye.
Yes, that's common with your other drawing, presumably. Can you just show us, I'll come in a bit closer here. Well, here we're seeing the basic apparatus of drawing, Sheena. Now you've got your tools of your trade in front of you. What exactly are they that we're looking at here?
Well, a set square, which I've tried to get vertical here.
Which you transfer detail from the helmet.
I laid the helmet on using plasticine and tissue paper between the plasticine because I think the oil comes out of it. And basically just worked around using this and doing a pencil mark at the bottom.
Just to get the basic profile,
yes.
first of all.
And then really joining up the dots.
Yes. So it's mainly a question of a few measurements that are precise, and then filling in the rest by eye, is it?
That's right. And also using it, you can measure with that certain, up there and down there.
Yes, this is just
distances.
Straightforward.
Yeah.
Well, it's a way of using dividers as calipers,
That's
is it?
right, yes.
Yes. What kind of different views have you done? I mean, how many drawings are required of a complex object of this kind?
Well, a basic front view, and
yes, that's
side.
We'll come back and look at these drawings later.
Yeah.
Front view and the side view.
The side view. Then, and it's useful using graph paper in this respect because you can read off certain lines.
Yes.
Get the parallels. And then I did a top view. And
if you're looking down on the
yes.
question, yes.
Yes. And then a view of the bronze strip on the top.
Yes.
The bronze strip, I think.
Was this drawn at a bigger scale or something, you mean?
No, I've drawn everything same size.
It's all actually same size. Yes. What are these rubbings we're seeing here, Sheena?
Well, this one, I like to use rubbings because I think they're a very good aid.
You just place the tracing paper directly on the helmet.
Yes, like that.
And then rub it off with a pencil.
I used a bit of masking tape.
Rather like brass rubbing, really.
Yes. I think it's essential because it would take hours just to measure and draw. And then I used a piece, not this particular piece, but I cut out a strip to fit in there.
Yes.
And took a rubbing of that. This has been traced on.
That's the whole of the inscription.
The whole of that,
yes, the whole of that strip.
Yeah.
And then you get it in a kind of exploded view,
Yes,
so it is stretched out, yes.
Which I'll do that there.
Yes. And then you transfer that onto paper, do you mean?
Yes.
The rubbing.
I traced it. Well, actually, I used a light box because this paper is quite thin.
Mm.
This is called CS10 paper. I don't know what it stands for, but it's chalk coated.
Yes.
And it's very good for doing archaeological drawings on.
Yeah.
You can use a light box if you put this drawing behind like that.
Mm.
It shows through the paper.
Oh, I see what you mean, yes. So that it's really a matter of tracing rather than rubbing off the rubbing.
That's right.
Well, before we look at the actual drawing itself, we just want to remind ourselves what the helmet itself looks like and what views are being shown. This shows the helmet straight on from the front, showing the nose guard at the bottom and the crest, and the single right hand, do you call it the cheek flap?
Yes.
The cheek
piece
on the right hand side. The other one, you'll remember, is detached, or was detached when the helmet was found. And could you just, that's one view then which you've drawn, Sheena, can you just turn it round so that we can see the sides and back? We're now seeing the right hand side with the flap showing the hinge very well now. And then the back of it round again. I'll just
top
view. Yes, you can just tip it slightly, that's right. So we're getting a view here of the top, which of course shows the maximum exposure of the brass strip, yes. And what about the back? Did you draw it separately from the back as well?
Only the strip
Only
at the
that
top.
strip, yes.
Yeah.
We just look at the left-hand side. Yes, the left-hand side showing here without where the missing piece of the cheek pieces, and the hole at the back due to the differential decay. And in fact we can see now very nicely here the hole made by the mechanical excavator where it just caught the top of it. But that's not to be confused with the hole down here, which is due to differential decay of the iron. So those are the principal views which we should be seeing the drawings of. And it is of course a little bit cleaner, I think, when we photographed it. So perhaps after we've looked at the drawing, we'll come back and look at some of the detail on the helmet itself, Sheena. Well, these are the actual views of the drawing. Perhaps we can look at these one at a time, Sheena. We'll look first of all at this front view of the helmet. And can you make any comments on what you've been drawing on this one?
Well, this I decided to do the front view, just showing the decoration and also the riveting, which I think is very important. And I decided not to draw in shading, and I thought that was quite important.
There's no attempt made to introduce a sort of artistic, like half-tone shading, no?
No, I would usually do that on an archaeological object.
Yes, except I mean with this shadow here where the...
Yes, that I did decide to do because it's depth to it.
Yes.
And it wouldn't interfere with the construction of the object. In fact, it would improve the look of it to show that it was deeper.
Yes.
But if I'd put shading in there, it would have obscured this detail and the riveting.
Yes,
so I kept it really as simple as possible.
Yes, if you'd attempted to show the helmet as rounded. Yes, because it is the detail in between that is obviously most interesting.
Yeah. And this I had to draw in perspective, and so I did a flat view of the nose piece as well.
The second view is looked at slightly to one side then, is it? When you say in perspective, you mean...
Well, it's at an angle. If you look at this, if I was to do a drawing from that, using that angle, then obviously it would be in perspective.
Yes. And then, but this shows it much more as it really...
Yes, as a sort of face-on view.
Yeah. But you haven't attempted to flatten it out in this one?
Not in that, but I have in that. I have flattened it out.
Yes, so the actual dimension, you mean, is not quite.
As
Right.
it is, no, that is,
No.
is the perspective, and that is it. The nose piece totally flat.
Yeah.
there.
What's the function here?
Also, this the writing has had to be drawn in perspective.
Yes, no, I lost you at the moment. Yes, could you point that again?
This
Yes.
this detail here had to be drawn in perspective.
Yes, I see. And have you flattened that out too, have you?
Yes, I've
Yes,
drawn
now we're
that.
looking at this other drawing here,
Bridge flattened.
with the whole of the brass strip, then flattened out, yes. So that we see, we can now read the whole of the inscription looking at it there in your drawing. We can see all of that. And then also the drawing going the other way. And of course the other bit is missing, isn't it? The other half of the brass piece.
Yes.
To the cross.
This, well, what should be there?
Yes.
Something like
Was that never found, was it?
that. There is a fragment, yes,
Yes.
which is
Was it thought that it was
Not
lost in the mud, or was it been missing right from the start?
I'm not sure actually.
No.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes, well that's the detail then of the front. Now if you can Smith's the drawing round, we'll have a look at the top. Can we bring that corner around to here? Yes, that shows the view looking from the top, where we're seeing the break. Are you going to sort of put any shading in where the bit is missing there? Or are you going to leave this blank on this side?
I think eventually, I mean, to draw an archaeological object, you usually draw it as it is, as it's been found,
Yeah.
with its faults in it.
Yes.
And perhaps later I'll do a reconstruction of the helmet.
Yes. And here, of course, we're looking down on the nose piece from above,
Yes.
aren't we? And seeing that detail foreshortened, which makes it look rather different kind of interlace
Yes. That's
from
right.
if it's seen straight on. Now, can we see the other side now? Showing the sideways view. Just now, what is interesting, of course, is seeing this after seeing the pictures of the helmet itself, to show how much more clearly a lot of this detail shows. In, for instance, drawing this hinge, is there any element of interpretation in this drawing, or is it just what you're seeing?
Oh no, I mean, it's just what I'm seeing, that's why I draw it. I think that's the advantage of
Yes.
drawing as opposed to photography.
Yes.
You know, I could actually see the rivets through looking.
Yes.
In a way, if you look at a photograph, it's very difficult to see.
Oh, indeed, yes.
And so what I could do was to feel behind the helmet with my fingers, and you know, I could feel the rivets, and then therefore draw them in.
Yes, well, when I talk about interpretation, I think I really mean not altering what you see, but selecting certain detail of you know, what is there. And you say that this is the difference between this drawing and a photograph, isn't it? To select that. In other words, you haven't tried to show any surface detail, as you say, of the, of the texture. You haven't tried to show the texture of this black cutting.
What you call the extraneous details.
Yes.
What came up on this was this curious little scoring.
Yes, I don't remember seeing that before.
No.
You saw that there, yes.
When I was drawing it through, sort of looking and looking.
Yes, you mean that hadn't been observed by anybody else before?
Apparently not.
No. What do you think it is?
I don't think it's anything to do with the helmet. I think it was probably a mark that somebody made, perhaps to make something else.
Yes.
Of course, it looks clearer here.
Yes, it's very faint on the original, as it is. Yes, well, thank you. That gives us a very good idea, I think, of the style.
Yes, I don't know how to do it. I've never done an exploded view. I suppose showing how, you see, through this drawing you can't see that this, apparently, so to say, this flap is joined to that.
Yeah. It would help much more with an example.
That metal piece is the same as the back, but this front is the same as that. Right. So all these eyebrows.
Yeah.
Here we're seeing a closer view of the detail of the drawing on the nose piece. And this is the beginning of the lettering starting off there.
If they approve, and they all do approve.
Ah, yeah. But it was up to you.
Yes. But I think really it's a preliminary drawing.
This is the end of the brass piece showing the two animals there. Close view of how two parts of the inscription meet here. This all seen very much more clearly now, isn't it, than it is on the object. Now, Sheena is now holding this flat on. It's a bit unmanageable now, as you say, because it's tending to roll up. But how are you going to secure this to a flatter back? You're going to paste it onto a board ultimately, are you, Sheena?
Yes, I use a spray glue and stick it onto a board.
Show the general background here, the strip drawing, and the side view, and finally that front view there. But this is of course very much supplementary to Mike Duffy's photographs of it, isn't it?
Yes. Well, fingers crossed. I think all that must have been done in.
Yes, we're now seeing the helmet face on. If you just sort of turn it round to give us another general view, then Sheena, just swing it round. That's fine. Again, right, baby. Just go around the full circle. It's the first time we've seen it completely clean here. It's right round again. Right. Now just seeing another view of the final detail here, as clean as finely cleaning. That's now the detail on this nose piece of the interlaced animals, going in pretty close. You'll see a good detail here of the letters which Jim Spriggs says in this part of the helmet are very much polished. This part of the inscription almost worn away by polishing rather than wear. Coming down here to the bottom there, yes.
And the side. No, sorry. What I meant, that's the best preserved strip. That's really well preserved. But,